a kind of a unique opportunity. It's really fun, actually. It's really, really fun. And it was interesting for us to reflect, gosh, how did we first meet each other? It seems like we all know each other in the breast
Ah,
cancer world. And so it's funny, it's a small group, but I'm thinking back, how do I know Ava? I've known her forever. But where we first, how do we know each other?
Hello, Joyce. It's nice to see you. I don't know the first time that we met, but I do remember one thing that you told to me really, really important for me. And you told, "Hi, Eva. I'm so fascinated, and I congratulate you for being a woman leading a breast cancer research group, talking about Salty Group." So there were a very nice words from you to me, and it is a clear message in favor of our young women, and not just patients, but also the young doctors and researchers in the field of breast cancer. So I do remember that words from you, and I'm so grateful, so thankful for that.
Well, that's interesting. That is so
We
neat. And
were we were in Portugal.
we were in Portugal. We were in
Yeah.
Portugal. And one of the things that people may not fully realize is really what a small world the breast cancer world is, from the point of view of individuals that are really dedicating a lot of their time, not only to seeing patients, of course, but to furthering the therapies, for making the therapies, for improving the outcomes of people, people that really are involved, especially people in networks, but also people at large academic centers where there's just a lot of patients, a lot of faculty.
Yeah.
In other words, groups that can make a big contribution to the studies. Those individuals who are kind of important parts of those groups really, really know each other. There's a tight collaboration,
Yeah,
there.
sure. Sure. And this is a very important message for our patients and women in general, because when they visit the doctor, they usually think that this is just that doctor's perspective, and it's not. That's not correct. So we put each case, each patient into a multidisciplinary team, into clinical cases that we present in medical congresses. I used to send emails when I have a doubt to see what my colleagues think or what they would do for that patient. So every decision is made in a consensus between doctors, and we are like a big family. So yes, I think it's really relevant. One example is about a doubt that I had through young women that she wanted to become pregnant. And I had a question regarding the positive trial. I sent an email to the principal investigator, and she answered immediately. And the doubt and the question was answered in the same day. So this is a very nice example on how to work together, how to collaborate, and to share knowledge in general.
Yeah, it's a really successful model. Everybody, first of all, really likes each other. Everybody's, you know, in the same boat, rowing in the same direction. So if a person has, if Solti, for example, the group that you lead, the big breast cancer collaborative group that you lead in Spain, if you guys have a really important hypothesis and you come up with a trial, everybody else is going to get behind that. You know what I mean? We're gonna collaborate on that, and vice versa. No matter where the ideas come from in the world, if it's an important idea and it's well enough supported and funded so that it's feasible to participate, these are really global collaborative efforts. Much of it's led by pharma, but of course that's after a ton of advisory boards and other consulting things that we all engage in to vet the ideas, vet the protocol. There's so much collaboration. We really know each other. It's really fun. We all love it. I think it's one of the best parts of our job is that we get to work with such great people. But the level of global collaboration is really interesting in terms of designing trials. What are the best ideas? What are the unmet needs? What can we do for these patients that we don't have the tools for? And also, as you pointed out, hey, I got a tough case here. I really don't know what
Yeah,
to do.
sure.
here?
Sure, especially in the medical oncology in general, we have many biomarkers, and groups of patients are becoming smaller and smaller because we are focusing on specific subgroups into the big groups. For example, BRCA mutated patients, they represent no more than 5 to 10% of patients, or PIK3CA mutations, or some specific types of subtypes, intrinsic subtypes. So if we don't collaborate, it's nearly impossible to make big clinical trials to test in hypotheses of how our drug is working, etc., in that specific subgroups, because it's really difficult to find that patients within the total population. So these collaborations are needed. And it's great to learn from colleagues from different countries, to see different situations and clinical situations, and to make these clinical trial designs possible and feasible in general. It's necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. As we get more and more subtypes and more and more molecular characteristics of the cancer, how do you treat that cancer the best? Now, we're just at the beginning of that revolution, but that's absolutely correct. The collaboration is really critical there. But, if I wanted to go back to something you said about, you really are, at that time, probably completely unique and still very, very uncommon, where women are leading, breast cancer groups, or any kind of clinical trial groups. And I'd love to hear about your journey. There's just very few examples, and so did you have certain mentors along the way, certain opportunities that you raised your hand up and, et cetera? Tell us about how this came to be the case.
Yeah, I was really lucky because when I began my first steps in medical oncology research, I was included into SALTI group by my mentors, who were Hernan Cortés and Jose Baselga. So they lead me to the interest in breast cancer. I had the opportunity to learn much, not just on clinical research, but on operational research, how to make a conversation with pharma, with other partners, etc. So it was really easy for me. And I've never felt the sense that being a woman is a disadvantage. In the contrary, I had many, many advantages. But I do think that many women are not still in the same position as men. I do feel that many directive positions are led by men by now. I don't know in the US. I would love to see your perspective, Joyce, but at least in Spain and Europe in general, women are leading less than 1/3 of organizations in general and within the medicine and the medical field. So I would encourage young women who are interested in leading research in cancer in general to raise their hands, to have the first step, to look for people who could help them to introduce in this field, because of familiar or because of social prior issues, women are not still in the same position as men. I don't know in the US if there's exactly the same or many differences there.
I think things have really changed for the better. They're definitely in the right direction. When I first started in medical oncology about 35 years ago, now I was at the National Cancer Institute, and we didn't have a single senior faculty person, not one, who was a woman, basically. And there just wasn't, quite frankly, opportunity. The very strong ladies, they left to go elsewhere. There just wasn't. So there was a just a mindset, that wasn't, on board there. That has really, really evolved. I think it's a kind of a snowball effect. Once you get some women in leadership positions who are loving it and, succeeding, it's just seeing that. I think just seeing that, saying, hey, that's possible. I'm going to go for that. I'm going to go for that.
Yeah.
Number one, that's the first step, is you've got to know that it's possible. Because if you don't see anybody like you, and this is true for, women, minority women, as well as women in general, it's true. You got to see people like yourself, that say, hey, I can do that. She can do it. I can do that. But then in addition, there has to be mentors. Mentors are very important. I have been leading the U.S. Oncology Breast Cancer Committee for many, many years, but it was my mentor, Steve Jones, who made that possible for me, and the head of Tex Oncology, Mike Reese. They're the people that made that possible for me. It wouldn't happen without them. So it was a combination of having seen other women, but I think it is really, really critical for us just to have more of a critical mass. I do think we could go down the list now of cooperative groups. For example, in in the U.S., where the breast research is being led more and more by women. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think there's still a ways to go, Eva, but I think it is definitely in the right direction. And I just think the presence of the women just give opportunities. I'll just mention that my daughter is I never really encouraged medicine. I never did. I thought the kids should figure out what they want to do on their own. But of course, I've been obviously very involved in patient care and research forever. And so, and she didn't start off medicine, but over time she opened up to medicine. So she went to medical school, and again, never encouraged medical oncology. No way. No way. That has to be a decision you make. But, just seeing me without me doing one bit of encouragement, now she's doing medical oncology training. So I think that just being around it, seeing, whether people seem like they're really engaged in things, it just makes it possible. It makes it, really compelling, to go in that direction. So it's super critical that the numbers are there. I think that's really, really important.
Yeah, sure. So she has a good example from you at home. And Joyce, I have a question for you regarding not just women as investigators, but women as patients. I see that there are many differences between countries in the initiatives that come from patients themselves or patients advocates who are really, really active in the US, maybe not as active in other countries like Spain. They are starting to put some type of initiatives together, etc. So in case that some patients are listening, what would be your advice, taking as example patients advocates regarding breast cancer in the US? So what would you recommend to patients?
Yeah, no, that you're right, Ava. That I'm thinking back to 35 years ago when I was at the National Cancer Institute. It was the beginning of the Breast Cancer Coalition, led by Fran Visco. So big time leadership there, Susan Love, and women who had been very, very much influenced by breast cancer survivors, and women who were really, really vocal that things were not where they should be. There was not the kind of communication, this idea of shared decision making and communication. I mean, women would go to the operating room, for example, and wake up not knowing if they were having a lumpectomy or mastectomy. I mean, it was like, we'll decide when we get in there. Well, that was totally unacceptable. So things have really changed a great deal. But women were basically insistent on getting some things fixed, and that was a big group, that really led to huge amount of funding in the U.S. for breast cancer. It's like the National Cancer Institute's budget went through the roof because they were insistent that they were going to be having regular meetings with the National Cancer Institute director. I happened to be working for Sam Broder at that time, and Fran Visco was always in the office. She and her big group of people, they were always there. You know what I mean? And so, they were pretty insistent they were going to be having some meetings.
Sure.
So they were not wallflowers. And so, but I'm thinking of another example recently, Ava, that's happened in the U.S., which I really think is great, which is this movement among patients, particularly breast cancer, that really is focusing on dose, saying we are getting dosed too high. We, these trials are done to maximum tolerated dose, and then we go into the randomized trials, and what gets FDA approved is too toxic for a lot of patients. We have no idea who to give it to. We need to find the right dose. It's this whole movement of the right dose. And you know what's come out of that? The Optimus approach by the FDA. It's a requirement now that before new agents go into big randomized trials that are going to lead to FDA approval, before you do that, you got to do some randomization and compare the effectiveness, the tolerability of different doses. It's fabulous because the women are spot on. These have just been developed according to an old model of give the maximum, and then we'll figure it out later. So it's an example, but I think that it's very important. There are a number of groups, that for metastatic breast cancer, triple negative breast cancer, the Breast Cancer Coalition, Susan G. Komen. There are a lot of groups that are available for women who want to really be part of things, want to take initiatives, and also in the U.S. I don't know if this is true in Spain, Eva, but now whenever there's steering committees for big trials, oftentimes in IRBs, patient advocates are a necessary part of this, and this is really really good, and particularly anything that's based on the patient experience, patient reported outcome, where that's a very critical part of the assessment. The women who are survivors and who have networks are critical, in this.
Yeah, sure, because there used to be objectives that are usually forgotten from the design on clinical trials, and these patients' perspective will improve clinical trial designs and taking some type of academic ideas to put into practice because it's really relevant, like the dose issue or many others. At least in Spain, they have been really active to get the access to some drugs, because we have the problem here that after the EMA approval of a drug, it's a very long time to get it reimbursed in Spain, maybe 2 years or longer. So it's really a difficult situation, as this is a public health system. It takes time and many steps, intermediate steps, to get a drug reimbursed. So they've been really active in the reimbursement, for example, for sacituzumab govitecan or trastuzumab deruxtecan. So they are beginning to work together, and we do love to see them together in that way. Getting back to the academic research, Joyce, I'm so worried of a very global situation now that I feel that the majority of ideas that are presented with results, positive or negative results in medical congresses, are pharma-sponsored ideas. So this is a very difficult situation, at least for me. It's really complicated to get an academic idea reimbursed or supported by grants, etc., or by private initiatives, as Mary Kay, for example, has supported some type of academic research. So how it's the perspective? I would love to see your view. Are you so worried, or as worried as me for this situation? Are many academic ideas left into the pending issues that we should cover?
I think you're spot on, Eva. When I first started in clinical research, again, a long time ago now, most of the ideas came from the investigators, and very slowly it has shifted over to much less now. Thankfully, as you know, there still are groups that are very able to do investigator-initiated trials. And I'll just step back and say that the reason that this is so important is that there are a myriad of questions that are not answered by some of the initial large trials that lead to registration. There's a myriad of questions on what are the best combinations, how long to give it for, what's really the patient population that's going to benefit versus not. There's a myriad of questions. What are the best combinations? How can we leverage this in a totally different patient population? So there's a myriad. Now, I would say that pharma has a very good system. Their medical affairs groups. Generally speaking, it's, at least in the U.S., it's very easy to get drug donated for the trial, but the funding for the trial, is sometimes either not available or is not enough.
Yeah.
And so, but it's not like we can't get access to the agents, not at all. I think it's actually pretty easy to get access to the agents, and pharma will donate them. But it's the funding, because they're expensive to do these trials. And but in the U.S., there still are, not nearly enough, and we certainly need more, and we need new models to do this. And it's probably going to, at the end of the day, be philanthropic, large philanthropic, opportunities that really provide the missing amount of funding. But, as you know, Eva, there are a number of, such the National Cancer Institute Cooperative Group is still, that's the NCI funded. That's still all investigator initiated. Groups like I Spy, again, is all investigator initiated. Very large academic centers such as Dana-Farber and MD Anderson, Memorial Sloan Kettering, they have the infrastructure, and also the philanthropic funding to make up the shortfall, if you will. I think that it's smaller academic institutions, or even in my world, which is we're a big community-based practice, where there isn't the cancer center infrastructure. So everything at the end of the day has to break even. So, and we don't always have that extra philanthropic funding to make up the shortfall. So it becomes more complicated. So it is something that is eroding. You're absolutely correct. I am very worried about it. I think it really now, and like the BCRF, the Breast Cancer Research Foundation, also, I think, provides a lot of opportunity for investigator-initiated trials. The Susan G. Komen, Mary Kay. There's a number, but I do think it really does have to be a focus to make up that shortfall. If pharma can provide some funding, but it's not enough. The other issue, Eva, that I think is discouraging, very discouraging, is the length of time it takes to get these trials written, through the regulatory, through the budget, through the contract, and get them open. It's become a very, very complex thing. And so for a lot of young investigators, it's a 5-year commitment, and that's a long time. They don't know that they'll even be at the institution. So that's another initiative that really needs to be looked at, is how to speed up this process for investigator initiative.
They should be considered so differently from pharma-sponsored trials. So to take into consideration that an academic idea, academic research from young investigators that would answer many questions relevant for patients should be helped and should be speed up to try to find funds and results as soon as possible. Yeah, this is a worried situation. We are, for example, doing some research at my lab at 12 de Octubre Hospital, trying to guess which are the biological mechanisms for why patients progress to a standard and really effective treatments such as CDK4/6 inhibitors or PD-L1 inhibitors or ADCs, different ADCs. But this needs many money, time, and persons trained to do that type of research. So it's not easy to find the support, and maybe US is the best model to find this way for research through philanthropy or public-private collaborations, and we must work hard on this, at least in Spain and many other countries in Europe.
And this is, again, where patient advocacy can be very, very helpful. I know the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation in the U.S., they raise funds, to support researchers that are doing innovative pilots, because pilot trials, you can do a 20-patient trial, go no go, a very specific hypothesis, but these are but you've got to have translational research, as you point out. You've got to have tissue, you've got to have biopsies, you got to have blood in order to make sense of a small pilot. But these are very, very doable. These are not going to be huge millions of dollars. This will be a more manageable amount. But if I want to ask you, one of the things I think a lot of people wonder when they see us who've been at this a long time is, patients wonder this, and I think also younger faculty, younger women, younger men too, they wonder, how do we do it? How do we cope with particularly the situations where we don't have the tools for patients? It is something that I think we have to have our individual strategies for our patients, because unfortunately, still, women develop metastatic disease. We don't have the tools for all of them. Some do very poorly. Others live for many, many years. It's very gratifying. But how do you personally manage this? Because you've been at this for a long time, and you're a busy clinician on top of being a researcher.
Yeah, I try to help as much as possible. I try to put everyone in common with the correct partners. I mean, between colleagues and patients, to try to help them to get to the correct center in where there are the best clinical trial or the best diagnosis tool for her. So I'm working in the public and the private field. Now I'm in my private hospital, and I'm trying to help patients from one side to the other to try to find the best options for them because of reimbursements, because of some type of different clinical trials in each site. I'm trying to help as well through my cooperative group, through SALTI. The best example has been the HOPE program. HOPE has been the first molecular platform that tests these biological mutations or alterations that are acquired during the breast cancer progression in metastatic breast cancer patients. So through this program, we have got foundation, one results for every woman that has been interested in participating in this program. And with that results, we have helped them to get the correct center for directed clinical trials or directed drugs. So trying to help everyone. I'm trying to help as well young doctors to be trained in specific centers. For example, one of my young doctors is gonna be at the Dana-Farber with Sarah Tolani next year to try to learn as much as possible on different research and clinical trials, etc. So I think that the key is trying to help everyone, putting patients, colleagues, or giving information as this meeting today to put together, to put people in the correct place to get the advantages for different therapeutic options. But it's not easy. It's not easy because still there are many, many differences between countries, between different areas in the same country, and it's happening in Spain, between different health systems, etc. So heterogeneity in the access and opportunities to get the best drugs and the best clinical trials is huge and is something to work hard in.
Yeah, that's and yeah, you're taking the the sadness and the grief that we feel for individual women, but you're focusing on what you can do, what you can do, and becoming very proactive and staying super proactive for every single thing you can help and push along the way. And for me, that's exactly the role that clinical research plays. It's the problem-solving tool, the massive problem-solving tool that we have to try to understand the molecular characteristics of patients' cancers, the metastatic, so that you can get them to the best trial possible. It's not always feasible because sometimes the trial will be too far away. But, I live in Texas, and Texas is big, but it's easy to fly between cities. And there's a lot of clinical research in Texas, a lot of big centers. So to really do that extra legwork for patients, but also to, try to think about individual patients. Why isn't she responding? Like you said, you're studying that. Yeah, but then to make sure to prioritize with our pharma colleagues, because one of the things to also emphasize is what a tight-knit group it is among the scientists and investigators in pharma and breast cancer investigators around the world. Again, small community. I know who to call if I feel like, oh, gee, we really have to do a trial with a WEE1 inhibitor. I mean, I know who to call, to talk about that. Now, that's not going to say that they're going to immediately go and, run with my hypothesis. You know what I mean? But you can have a contribution. And then you can bring it up at consulting advisory boards, et cetera, and try to move that. Because if you've seen that some patients have resistance mechanisms that really need to be addressed, and where the tools are to address that, it's very empowering. It really helps overcome a lot of the sense of loss, and it empowers us as opposed to feeling disempowered in the clinic when we don't have the answer for a woman who so desperately needs the answers. It is very difficult. I'll tell you, it gets harder, I find, over time too. It's a cumulative effect, and you just have to stay proactive. And again, we can't do everything. None of us can do everything, but we can focus on certain areas that we can say. So for me, Eva, I've chosen to focus on the primary resistant triple negative breast cancer. That's arguably one of our most difficult scientific biologic questions is, why is it that some women's triple negative breast cancer don't respond to the preoperative therapy and come back? We're just missing. That's a group of those patients. So I'm just trying to really understand serial biopsies, doing pilot trials of novel therapeutics. And Mary Kay has been very supportive to me and others in the US that are working in this area. And I really appreciate that. You can't do it without funding. This is strictly philanthropic funding, because quite honestly, Eva, as a busy clinician, I don't have time to write the NIH grant. Quite honestly, I just don't.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
have time for that.
Sure. Time and money. These are our main problems, but time is maybe the first problem that we have, and our responsibility is to build up multidisciplinary teams within hospitals, represented not just by clinicians, but by biologists and pharmacists and people who are able to write the grant, and people able to set up a clinical trial, etc., because we are clinicians. So we are ready to visit cancer patients and to make relevant questions, but we need that type of team to be able to conduct all our clinical ideas, and it's necessary. As an expert in triple negative breast cancer, maybe the last question to be addressed today is, Joyce, how would you say to breast cancer patients, especially in the triple negative disease? They are younger women. They are maybe so worried because of their personal situation as well, and many of them are in this the diagnosis of triple negative breast cancer. So, what would you say that have been the most important research on triple negative and the good news for them?
Yeah, no, and I think I want to augment your point you just made as well, Eva, about a team, because that's the other thing that can shore us up when we have failures in the clinic. We have a team of people that we can talk science to and be proactive with. We can't do this on our own. We have to have the support, not only the practical support, but the personal support. We really have to have that. The big advance in triple negative, as we know very well, Eva, is the addition of immunotherapy now in the curative. Right now, we have pembrolizumab approved. We're waiting on others, such as atezolizumab, durvalumab, others, maybe nivolumab, others. That these are all immunologic agents that enhance the immune system against the breast cancer in combination with chemotherapy given preoperatively to triple negative breast cancer patients. There's been a very, very substantial advance in the cure rate for those patients. The challenge is, who's really benefiting, who's not going to benefit. We don't know that yet. We really need to do that. But there's, the clinical trial designs are critical in terms of making the rapid progress. And Solti and the German Breast Group and the I-SPY group, among others, the NSABP, there are groups that have long led the way in preoperative strategies. You get your answers faster. You can go to by the time women go to surgery, how much cancer is left? Is it all gone? We don't have to wait 5 years to figure out if the cancer is going to recur or not. We need short-term readouts of success or lack of success. That's been huge. The other thing, Eva, I'm very, very optimistic about that's going to speed up how we can get answers, because we are sitting on a mountain of new agents, and new strategies. How do we figure out fast what's going to work? And I think the era of after women have had their chemotherapy, their immune therapy, if they're eligible, if they're appropriate for that, their surgery, their radiation therapy, and now they're, quote, without evidence of disease, but we don't know who's going to recur and who doesn't. And the new technology that's still developing, it's not perfect yet, of being able to get a blood test and look for tumor DNA in the bloodstream. This is turning out that if it's found, it predicts that there's a high risk, a very high risk, that the cancer is going to recur, and to do clinical trials for those women, get the new agents in there. I think that's going to revolutionize how we do trials and eventually how we do practice. We're just at the beginning. It's just the dawn of this, but I think that's going to be a very rapid way, hopefully, to get regulatory approval. To get these. Hey, we see a signal. We clear that the endpoint is clearance of the DNA.
Yeah, sure. This dynamic concept on what is happening with a patient, because if you don't have a good initial hypothesis, why not to start treatment and keep the patient followed by these dynamic biomarkers? So this is the best way to move in. So it's not just a question to have the best idea, the best drug, but to have the correct design, because even when you have a good drug, if you have a bad or a wrong concept or a wrong clinical design, the trial could be negative or this idea could be missed. So yes, and we need the support from agencies as well to accept this type of new clinical trials design that would be much rapid and more effective than the prior ones. So Joyce, I think this has been a very interesting meeting. We have had about 30 minutes time talking on research, on young women, young investigators. We've talked about patients. We've talked about research, pharma-sponsored or academic research, differences between countries, US, Europe, and how to better design new trials, especially for the triple negative disease, which is maybe the most needed clinical situation within the breast cancer field. So I've been so happy to talk with you today, Joyce.
So fun. It's great. This is a great opportunity to do that, just to step back and reflect. But I do think there's just been tremendous progress. Eva, I've been doing this 37 years. If we start from the day of fellowship, oh my gosh, was it different? There's just so few opportunities and very little. There was no research in the community at that time, Eva. Nothing. It was all in big academic centers. Boy, it's been a dramatic change. And I will say to the young folks that are, in their training or early faculty or early investigators, that stay tuned. Watch out. Wow, is it going to be great over the next 35 years? It's going to revolutionize, and you'll be part of it. And we got to hang in there, Eva. We can't retire ever. We got to just hang in there, okay? We got to see it happen, okay? Okay.
Okay.
So,
nice to see you, Joyce. And we hope, thanks to Mary Kay for their support for this meeting and many other research ideas and initiatives. Thank you all for being here. Stay tuned, because breast cancer is improving, and clinical research is the key and the solution for many questions that we are ready to solve. Thanks so much, and have a nice day from Spain.
And from the US. Thank you. Bye, Eva. Bye-bye.